the three-quarter line moving. Everyone should be able to handle and run with the ball, but, equally important, players must support each other. Kicking is an integral part of the game. Whichever foot is used, the kick must be accurate, otherwise the advantage of possession is lost. Yes, accurate kicking can mean points. This is where it should all begin. Though, with one ball among 20, these boys don't get much chance to handle the ball very often. It's the teacher who is getting the activity and not the boys, and so it is with this class. Good coaching must be objective, progressive, and designed to provide activity for everyone in the class. These boys are working 4 against 4 across double grids, each grid measuring approximately 10 yards. The teacher stops the game only to make a coaching point. The game they are playing is called end ball, the object of which is to pass the ball to their own player at the end of the opponent's grid. When they know the game and their ball handling has improved sufficiently, the teacher may expand the game to 8 versus 8 over twice the number of grids. For the moment, it's back to single grids for more intensive handling. It's 1 versus 3. The coach is always on hand to give individual coaching. To put greater pressure on the boys, the coach frequently reduces the numbers involved in any given practice. The element of competition is often used to stimulate greater effort. When a pass is intercepted, the observer takes over and becomes the interceptor. Meanwhile, the coach moves from grid to grid all the time in order to help with particular points. Here he is showing how easy it is to sell the dummy. To maintain interest, the coach is constantly introducing variations on a common theme. This teacher is insisting that the passing must be done along the sides of a grid, though they are still working in 4s, with one boy trying to intercept the passes. It is important for the boys that competition is properly organized, and what better way of doing it than by putting the results on a blackboard in this 2 versus 2 competition in which the winners pass on. By concentrating play into specific periods of time, say 2 minutes per session, the boys are encouraged to work at maximum effort. The boys record their own scores, and at the end of each 2 minutes, the winners move on. A natural progression from 2 versus 2 is 4 versus 4, and that is what is happening with this class. The sessions of play are still of 2 minutes duration, and the winners continue to pass on. As far as we are concerned, these activities are not ends in themselves. They are means of developing those simple techniques of rugby football that in the past have tended to be neglected. To be enjoyable, all activities must have a purpose, and one of the fundamental techniques of rugby football is to run whilst carrying the ball in two hands. So many promising moves fizzle out, all because the ball carrier tucks the ball under his arm and so is unable to make a quick pass. Here is another practice with the same ball-carrying aim in mind. In this case, they work in pairs, the shadower trying to keep as near as possible to the man with the ball. Some boys are first familiar with soccer, and the enterprising teacher is quick to exploit this knowledge in introducing them to rugby football. It's plain to see that both games have much in common: the intelligent use of space, support for the man with the ball, and the need to work together as a team. The first stage of transition from soccer to rugby is by substituting the oval ball for the round one. It is quickly apparent that with the rugby ball, dribbling is much more difficult, a fact which gives as good a reason as any for passing the ball with hands rather than feet. At this stage, we are not concerned with the ball being passed backwards, so long as the ball is handled from player to player. The emphasis is in having the ball available and passing it to a teammate in the open space. The main rule at this stage is that no one is allowed to run with the ball, a restriction which encourages the players not in possession to move into open spaces in order to receive the ball. A further development of the game allows players to run with the ball until touched on or below the shots, whereupon they must pass the ball, but not forwards. And finally, if the man is touched on the knee or below, he must immediately stop and put the ball on the ground for the opposition to restart the game. Running with the ball and keeping it available at all times is an acquired skill. As with other aspects of the game, it is often necessary to isolate the technique and improve it before reintroducing it into the game. In this relay, the technique of running with the ball in two hands is being practiced in isolation, but at the same time under the pressure of competition. And so, on to the two-handed carry, with passing to and from a partner. By introducing a third player, the middleman is obliged to take and make a pass on both sides. He takes the ball early by reaching for the pass. By working a continuous relay in fours, further pressure is placed on the handling ability of each individual. However, if the players are lacking in handling ability and are still making forward passes, there is no purpose in subjecting them to this kind of pressure. As technique improves, the practices become more demanding and pressure is increased. The first boy to pass runs behind the line in an attempt to put two hands on the shots of the last man before he scores. In this way, the class is being prepared for learning to tackle. To be fully effective, practices should at some point include opposition. Here, the boy has to draw the opposition, which may mean his having to pass under pressure in order to put his partner in the clear. As can be seen, most of these practices that don't involve tackling can be performed equally well on soft or hard surfaces. To put greater pressure on the middleman, the opposition approaches from a more realistic angle, first at a walking pace and afterwards at speed. This practice provides a natural opportunity for introducing the dummy. This is, in fact, what happens to the player who forgets the golden rule that says, always take the man with the ball. In the 4 versus 2 situation, the players are required to concentrate even more, for there is greater likelihood of passes going astray. By working in well-defined grids, the practices are controlled and therefore have a better chance of being effective. Again, we can isolate the running and handling of each group of 4 by dividing the whole area into 2 long channels and having a succession of passes from 8 scrum halves situated on the right-hand line of each grid. This practice is also extremely useful in encouraging players to run straight. The screen pass, in which the ball is hidden from the opposition by the body of the man in possession, is a very effective way of distributing the ball, particularly on contact. Once again, the technique is first practiced without opposition, but with emphasis on dipping the shoulder in the direction from which opposition will come later on. After walking it through with opposition, it is practiced at speed. Every player should be able to handle the ball from the ground, and this pick-up and run relay is an excellent competitive activity to develop this ability. Success is dependent on approaching the ball slightly to one side and low enough to allow the ball to be gathered. They're enjoying it too. In a game of rugby, one is much more likely to have to pick up a moving ball, and this is what is being attempted here. Only by constant practice can the player hope to do this automatically in the course of a game. What could otherwise be a dull drill is here, by competition, turned into an enjoyable activity. It is equally necessary to be able to fall on the ball so that it is screened from the opposition. Furthermore, the player must be in a position from which he is able to get onto his feet immediately and keep both himself and the ball away from the other team. As with previous drills, once the technique has been appreciated, skill can only be acquired by practicing the technique in the context of a game. And this 2 versus 2 activity, combining grub kicking with falling on the ball, is designed with this in mind. It is much easier to fall on the ball in the course of a game than it is in cold blood. Although rugby is primarily a handling game, accurate kicking is an essential feature. Right from the start, the teacher should explain the techniques of the various types of kick, such as the place kick, for which the ball may be placed upright. To obtain lift, the toe strikes the ball just above the ground. To arrive at the starting point for the run-up, the kicker takes a few paces back and comes straight in to make the kick. Another popular method employs the instep for kicking the ball. The placing of the ball for the round-the-corner method of place kicking is the same, except that, in this case, the player runs up at an angle. Demonstration by the coach is essential, but remember, it is the players who are there for practice. On then to the third method, which is here being practiced by another group. A white line is being used as a guide to the run-up and the kick. The aim of the practice is not only to place kick the ball, but also to encourage accuracy by endeavoring to make it land and bounce back along the line. The teacher moves in to reinforce the key coaching points, beginning with the importance of the straight run-up and placing the ball correctly so that the point of the ball is visible to the kicker. Secondly, he indicates that the white line is there as a guide to the run-up, and having made the point, he shows the boys what technique plus practice can achieve. On now to the drop kick, for which the first thing to be learned is the drop of the ball so that it bounces back up in the direction of the kicker. Not until this becomes automatic can the player hope to kick with accuracy. Contact is made with the top of the instep, just as the ball touches the ground, and follow-through of the leg is vital in getting the ball to lift. The boys begin practicing close together in pairs, and as they become more accurate, so they increase the distance between themselves. The learning of one technique often reveals weakness in another. In this case, ignorance in the technique of catching a high ball. He shows that by cradling the ball into the chest and turning the body, he can avoid knocking on and loss of possession. Coaching by the teacher and free practice must alternate, for without having the opportunity to try out new techniques for themselves, boys easily become bored and quickly lose interest. Once the players have a fair understanding of a technique, such as the drop kick, then it should be practiced in the realistic situation of the game. In this instance, a flanker is providing passive opposition to an outside half who is attempting to drop kick. As execution of the technique improves, then the opposition becomes much more active. And here, the same principles are being applied in practicing the punt. This particular activity, with an interceptor, underlines the need for the kicker to concentrate on accuracy. Indeed, if the kick is inaccurate, then the opposition gains possession. The cross kick, another type of punt, requires a slightly different technique, because in order to send the ball diagonally inwards, it has to be kicked across the body. Even this relatively simple practice for the cross kick is difficult, for it calls for considerable control. To be successful, the ball should hang in front of the kicker's oncoming teammates. Everything concerned with the coaching of schoolboys applies equally to senior players. They too use grids for ease of organization and in order to concentrate effort in the right direction. Like the teacher, the club coach only interrupts a practice when he has something to contribute. In this instance, he suggests that the man with the ball draws the opposition before making the pass in order to create a gap for the receiver to come busting through. After no more than 2 or 3 demonstrations, the groups go off to their separate grids to practice. The various progressions, as used by the teacher for developing techniques, are also used by the club coach. Here, the defender is made to forget the golden rule of going for the man with the ball, and is, in consequence, sold the dummy. The coach knows the golden rule, and steps in to demonstrate that the defender must take the man with the ball. Eventually, the good defender will not only be able to take the man with the ball, but will also be able to foil the attempt at an inside pass. This coach is trying to develop support play as it might be required from a tackle. First, he explains his purpose, and then his demonstration group shows how it occurs. A player hits the ground as if from a tackle, and the ball is popped up to the rest of the supporting players. But the second time, the ball is not popped up, and the coach explains that the first player up must get his foot over man and ball before attempting to pick it up. As the practice continues down the field, the coach insists that the ball should not be hurled at the supporting player, but should be gently popped up, so that an oncoming teammate can take the ball in his stride. Once more, the players are asked to repeat the practice, and this time the whole maneuver goes through well. Straight away, the coach brings the whole group to the goal line, in readiness to start them off in a 4-team competition down the entire length of the pitch. It is the continuous effort over the 110 yards and stimulated by competition that creates the realistic atmosphere in which the technique can be experienced and polished in circumstances similar to those that are encountered in a game of rugby. Kicking at senior level is often aimless because it tends to be carried out as a last desperate action when nothing else seems possible. Here, the group is practicing drop kicking under pressure, the sort of pressure that is likely in a match. Even so, the coach notices that, in face of active opposition, the kicker is not giving himself sufficient room to make a well-executed drop kick, and, by demonstration, explains that by moving further back from the opponent, he might obtain that fraction of a second of time that he needs. With more and more experience, the kicker acquires the ability to take a ball from anywhere and, almost in the same movement, adjust it in his hands and make the kick. No, you mustn't be a stationary target, a point which the coach is quick to mention. He suggests that the kicker might sometimes feint one way and then make the kick from a slightly different spot. At any rate, keep on the move and keep the opposition guessing. So much for coaching. Now we return to Twickenham to look at the way that our national teams attempt to apply the techniques as skills in the context of international play. And immediately, from a bad kick-off, the opposition gain possession. This spectator's interest is in the outcome of a scrum, in which England have taken the ball against the head and, by good support in the ruck, have retained possession for distribution to the backs, which, unfortunately, they now kick away. From an adventurous throw-in over the end of the line-out, Ireland are checked for a moment, but they regroup, secure possession in the maul, and by good running with the ball, are able to progress into the England half. From this next line-out, we see the dangers of inaccurate kicking, and, sad to relate, neither team has the ability to take advantage of the opponent's weakness, and the play returns to precisely the same place from which it started. On then to yet another line-out that starts well, with a good jump and palm by number 5, and a fast service by the scrum half. But unfortunately, a wildly inaccurate kick by the outside half gives his own backs no chance whatsoever of regaining possession. Here, at last, from a line-out, is a team that is prepared to use its handling ability, and by bringing in the fullback, they create a simple overlap for the wing to make a run. It is the unpredictable nature of rugby football that makes it the intriguing game that it is. Who would have thought that from this scrappy piece of play could have come a sequence of running and handling that eventually produced the outstanding try of the match? The purpose of coaching is threefold: to develop each player's potential, to improve team play so that everyone on the field is able to enjoy the game to the full, and to make such attractive rugby football that the game is very exciting to watch.